Yo, what's up everyone? Before we begin, I just want to say why I'm even making this video, because I am sick and tired of 80% of all those YouTuber filmmakers saying, oh guys, all you need to achieve cinematic picture with this camera is use 180-degree shutter rule, simple! And then literally in the next shot, they use like 1,000 of a second shutter, say, and then they say, oh guys, look how incredibly stable the footage is. Such an amazing camera, you should totally buy it. Otherwise I won't get sponsors and brand deals. And my poor little peepee will get even smaller than it already is. So, can you really achieve cinematic reliable results with DJI Action 5 Pro or any other similar action camera for both personal and professional work? Yes, but there are limitations. I did a lot of tests and we'll talk about everything I discovered. Firstly, we need to talk about two main problems with action cameras in general when it comes to achieving a certain cinematic look, if you will. These two problems are connected because it's how shutter speed and stabilization in these cameras work together. For action cameras, to have the smoothest, most stable footage, the shutter should be set pretty high, which means breaking 180 shutter rule, which results in video looking choppy and not very natural. On the other hand, if you're gonna lower shutter and use stabilization, it can result in very bad looking jitters, resulting in unusable footage. So, is there something we can do about it and still keep footage cinematic and stable? Yes. Right now, I will show you a bunch of clips and everything you will see was shot in the proper 180-degree rule, either 24 frames per second or 60 frames per second. Slow motion with in-camera stabilization turned on and off for some shots. Okay? So, let's start with 24 frames per second and 50 shutter speed with stabilization turned on. Rocksteady, not Rocksteady Plus. So, you can achieve stable footage under the following conditions. Condition number one. Any kind of slow panning or tilting movement from standing still or completely locked shot when you're not making any extra movements. Also, I highly recommend using DJI selfie stick. For that, it will further reduce the amount of vibrations from your hands that camera picks up, and stabilization will have to work less, therefore not producing those ugly jitters. Plus, you can get more creative with the camera by easily getting lower and higher angle shots. I also attached my old gimbal legs to the end of this stick, so I can easily use it for static shots. Condition number two. You can achieve smooth, jitter-free, moving and even follow shots, but you will need an action camera gimbal, like that one. Furthermore, you will have to ninja walk as well. You can see done on these shots. Also, I must emphasize they were performed on not the most even surface, and I didn't really wear the best kind of boots for ninja walking. Speaking of, in these shots, I was walking somewhat normally, but still carefully without a gimbal. Instead, camera was attached to DJI selfie stick. And yes, it was filmed with 60 frames per second, 120 shutter. Since shutter is higher, camera's stabilization can handle less careful movements, so to speak. But you still should be careful with your movements. I would say that every single given movement you saw earlier is achievable with DJI selfie stick, but you will have to raise your shutter up to 120 at least, which looks okay in 24 frames per second, but not ideal, of course. Now, let's talk about my favorite types of shots. These shots. You probably have seen plenty of these shots online, and I'm happy to report you don't need stabilization for them whatsoever. But there are a few things to keep in mind, and that is how secure and sturdy is your setup when mounting the camera. For instance, here's two clips. For one, I used the suction cup on the windshield of the bike. In the other, I clamped it to the mirror handle. I think you can clearly see which one looks better. Now, I did say that you don't need any stabilization, and I personally think it looks great without it. It is a bit shaky, but brings up the energy and it makes sense. However, if you don't want any shakes whatsoever, you will have to break 180-degree rule and bump shutter speed to 120 or 240, depends on how shaky the footage is. Yes, it is itching. The footage is itching, guys. Depends how shaky the footage is, which looks okay. I also want to mention it is absolutely normal to break 180-degree shutter rule when you're filming an intense action scene, like a fighting sequence, for example. You can see it being done in movies all the time. Reason being, audience simply won't see what's going on in all that motion blur. Just something to keep in mind, because I think sometimes we're being way too overly focused on rules and forget certain things. Before we're gonna move on, I'd like to emphasize that I did my tests only on the car and a bike. If you're planning to attach your action camera to a bicycle or a skateboard, I can't give you any real numbers, but after playing around with the camera for as long as I did, I can guess that for a bicycle, it's going to be something between 120 to 240, depending on your terrain, and for skateboard, between 240 to 500. But again, that is if you're planning to use stabilization, and again, I'm just guessing. Now, I want to give you a few extra tips. One more limitation of the action cameras is that they don't have close focusing distance, but there is a way around it. You need to get a 49mm step ring for action cameras specifically, which slides on it just like that, and then you need to buy a set of macro filters. They usually come in a set of 4, +1 magnification, +2, +4, and +10, which you will never use because it's insanely close. I did use them for many shots you saw earlier, for example, all the bike shots and restaurant shots, and some others I just don't remember already which they were, because I filmed that forever ago, if I'm gonna be honest. One more important thing, I don't use DJI and the filters. I bought K and F concept. Why? Well, DJI slides on top of the camera's protective filter, which means you can't stack those NDs with macro filters. K and F, on the other hand, screws directly to the lens, and you can combine them with macro filters or anything you want, really. Is it way more inconvenient than snapping DJI NDs? Absolutely, 100% it's not fun, but it's worth the result you can achieve. Next, the reason I bought a gimbal for my Action 5 Pro was actually not to achieve follow shots without breaking 180-degree rule. That was to create a fake drone shots. I combined my monopod with a boom pole, attached the gimbal with the camera to it, and boom, high as a kite. Keep in mind, for that kind of shot, you will need camera stabilization on, and you'll have to set shutter to 120. 50 won't cut it, unfortunately. Now, apart from 180-degree shutter rule, it goes without saying that in order to achieve the best looking picture, you must use the right image settings and nail your exposure. So, always shoot in D-Log, manually set your shutter speed and ISO. The lower is your ISO, the better, but 100 to 400 are very clean. And I sometimes switch from 100 to 400 instead of swapping filters all the time. 800 is acceptable, 1600 is less acceptable, but you can squeeze something out of it in the low light. 3200 is your last resort if you're feeling truly desperate. When you are exposing, expose for the highlights. Since there's not too many tools available to you when exposing, there's two things you could do. One, you can trust what you see on that little screen and simply make sure that the sky is not blown out and you can clearly see blue sky and individual clouds. Same applies to indoors. Just make sure that main light source is not blown out. Second way, and that is actually the way I expose for highlights, point your camera at the biggest, brightest spot or light source in your scene, be it the sun in the sky or a lamp, a window, or whatever it is, and make sure the camera shows from +1 to +1.7 exposure. In my test, +1.3 is usually the sweet spot. +2 is fine, but never go beyond it. Make sure to switch your bit rate to high, but keep in mind, for whatever reason, when you are manually adjusting settings, be it ISO or shutter or anything else, sometimes, not always, camera changes bitrate back to standard. I got no idea why, it is very annoying, so always double check when changing settings. Maybe there is 1 in a million chance that DJI will see this video and fix it through software updates or something. Maybe they are aware of it and it's on the way, I don't know. Now, for some final thoughts, I just want to say, in my personal opinion, action cameras like Action 5 Pro is a great tool to complement your work by creating those creative types of shots, or the kind of shots that big cameras would only complicate or flat out make dangerous, not only in terms of breaking expensive equipment, but also in terms of creating a potential hazard or a hazardous situation for people involved. If I'm gonna be honest, I don't see myself using this camera for follow shots, but I absolutely see myself using it in creative ways, like attaching it to the exterior of a car or a bike, placing it in tight places where a big camera would not fit, faking a drone, or using it for simple pans, tilts, and static shots when I need that wide focal length. To conclude, it is absolutely possible to capture stunning, cinematic-looking footage with this camera, not to mention that it's just incredibly convenient to carry with you instead of a big, long, fat, black camera bag. I take it with me more often than my camera when I just go for a walk around the city, hang out with friends, travel, or anything else really. That's it. I think I covered everything I wanted. If you have any questions, ask away in the comments, and yeah, till next time. Bye.